Hi everyone, welcome back. Over the last 2 weeks now, I've been working through a program that I'm on, a mastery program, and authenticity's come up. So one of the challenges that we've had over the last 2 weeks is to try and understand. Well, we in the process of understanding what that actually means for each of us individually, but also to contextualize it or see how that plays out in your day-to-day life. So a couple of things that have come up looking at these definitions or distinctions or whatever you want to call them. One of the things that came up and been talking about is having some self-awareness, understanding your values, your beliefs and motivations, and all the stories that you tell yourself. So I have a buddy in Singapore who we meet each week, and we talk about each of these things as we go through this program. And we were talking about this contextualization of authenticity and what does and doesn't work. And one of the things that has come up for me is that there's things that you are not authentic about, but you don't even realize. In one of our breakout rooms, we went through exactly that question about what inauthenticities have come up. Are there
authenticities? That's a hard word to say.
Yeah, that's right. That one. What are those things that? And you've got to really put some thought into it, because a lot of them are subconscious.
For example. Like things you don't share, you mean, or things that you're not vulnerable about, or things?
Things that you're not being authentic about, but you may not even realize it.
Right.
Something that
they're hidden in something.
Hidden, yeah, it could be really hidden, and in some cases they're not hidden. I'll come back to an example when it comes back to me. But then we started talking about this today, and one of the things that I've been thinking about is, well, that's, okay, there's authentic and inauthentic actions, behaviors, whatever we're doing, or just ways of being, and trying to make sense of how we are, where we are in this, however you want to talk about it, in a scale of authenticity or whatever, then trying to work out where you are in there. So there's the self-awareness coming in.
I think it can be quite confusing, that idea of, is this me or not?
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Absolutely.
That's what you're saying. Am I really being me? And without getting too analytical about it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's there's two parts to it, because there's the internal dialogue with yourself and trying to understand that, but then you've got to become more self-aware around what it actually is.
Yeah.
And then there's the external part where people see you, and you either don't choose to show them exactly who you are from an authentic point of view, or you mask it. So some people do that too.
Yeah. And for me, that's always an inner relationship. So if you want to, if you guys want to do a quick little self-assessment on how authentic you are or not are, I wouldn't try and think, do people think I'm being myself on the outside?
Absolutely.
I would say, am I accepting all of myself on the inside?
Yeah.
Because that's what projects to the outside, is that inner acceptance of who you are. So I the piece that Kevin and I were talking about, I think is worth sharing, around this idea of, well, what bit's me and what bit's not? Like, which bit am I trying to amplify up? Like, what is the bit that's really me? And I think to understand the bit that's really you've got to understand the bits that aren't you. And the bits that aren't, for me, the bits that aren't me are all the conditioning, the conditioned beliefs that I've agreed to because of where I've grown up, and the messages I've got from where I've grown up. So the example I gave to him, which was quite a funny example in the way I expressed it, but I said to him, I was taught not to sort of embrace the softer parts of myself. So, as a man, I was sent messages that, men have to not really care too much about people, Don't get too embedded in your emotions. Work out what you want, fucking go for it. Like go after it.
Yeah.
Excuse the swearing, but it felt appropriate. And that always didn't feel right to me. And it always didn't, that wasn't my inner world.
Yeah.
My inner world cared a lot about people and cared a lot about myself. And my way of building trust with people has never, or building relationships even, has never been one of forcing them to do anything or forcing any particular agenda on them. It's to really understand them and to see who they are for who they are. So I think it's taken a lot of work on myself to realize that I can embrace those softer components of myself and still be comfortable within myself. And, that's where we went and started talking about this whole idea of parts, which is that part of the return to authenticity is recognizing that prior to about the age of 11, we hadn't yet really encountered the experiences that we had as a teenager and as an adult that told us that parts of us weren't okay. That could have been done by your parents, teacher, students, your experiences. And, for whatever reason, you sometimes have agreed to those. And so in doing so, you've shut down aspects of yourself, which has formed you into an identity where there could be parts of yourself that you actually are putting aside because you fear that they'll be viewed a certain way. And that process is perfectly normal. What we're talking about is the return to that state where you can accept within yourself, or this is what I'm talking about, you can comment on it, to accepting all of those parts of who you authentically are. And to be able to separate those from the conditioned beliefs or the messages you were sent about who you should be.
Yeah, and there's a step further. There is also discovering what those authenticities are.
Yeah,
some of them are lost by conditioning, by cultural aspects, all sorts of things.
Yeah.
And then trying to find out those things that are not as authentic as you want them to be, and then deciding, okay, well, I want to change that, and then do something about it.
Well, I think in physical action. So you can only know, and what I mean by that is we all know within our inner feeling that when we do something, does it feel right?
Yeah.
Does it feel like right and okay for who we are?
Yeah.
Or does it feel a bit weird, and weird's the wrong word? We know if something's authentic or not, right? And that's kind of why we use that language. And again, it comes back to that inner feeling, is if we're accepting of ourselves and we feel that internal alignment and act off that internal alignment of authenticity as much as we can. There's moments where we're all going to be like imperfect. That's part of being human. But I think that's my sense of it. And I've had many a moment where I've acted out of my own ego.
Yeah.
To try and force a situation into being something that it's not, because I wasn't willing to accept a part of myself and how I felt in a situation. Because it actually, I didn't want to accept it.
Yeah.
So I had to try and force the external situation to be different so I could avoid accepting the part of me inside.
Well, that's awareness, isn't it? And in some ways, that's the easier part of authenticity, when you actually you can sense it and then choose not to be authentic or whatever. And I'll come back to that one later. Or I'll work on that next year or whatever it is. But then you've got the ones that you're not even aware of. And in some cases, in some of my cases along the way, I've had conversations with old schoolmates and things like that, where they've made comments about things that are like, hey, you were different in school. And it's like, really? It would have been nice if you had told me then, because I didn't know that. I didn't realize that how they were seeing me, and obviously how I was being.
Yeah.
Yeah. and then having gone working.
And was that a positive process for you?
Yeah, absolutely. It was like, oh, thank you for letting me know that.
Yeah.
And also being able to stay present in that conversation with them and not get aggressive about it or defensive. Yeah.
Or go back to the moments and go, no, I was like this.
Yeah, that's right. Defend it.
Just accept it for what it is.
Yeah, yeah. And then fast forward to the last couple of years where I've made a massive effort in working through a lot of this stuff. We were talking just before that the conversations that I have and the friends that I have around me these days are just unbelievable. I was thinking about that. I met someone this morning, a friend who's just back in town for a while, and it was like, you know, we don't really know each other that well, but we know each other very well. You know, we prepared to talk at a level that's very different, and that only comes from authenticity.
Yeah,
yeah, it's a cool feeling.
It is. I think I think that authenticity, call it an honesty in conversation. COVID really helped with that. I think it shifted things because people had to talk honestly about how they were and how they're feeling. But I also think that those external circumstances, like those events, help us talk about our real situation. And then as we talk about how we really are and feel open to doing that, we touch upon that place of more often about who we are rather than the projected story that we want the world to see about ourselves.
Yeah.
And the more you can practice that, the better.
Yeah.
Obviously read your moment, read your audience. You don't want to be like inappropriately disclosing everything about yourself, because that crosses boundaries with people. But I think that practicing your authenticity by being authentic in each moment about what you do and what you say is a really vital part of, life.
Yeah. Yeah. And being open, being honest, and being vulnerable, being totally vulnerable with not totally, but being vulnerable with whatever's in the context of the conversation.
Yes.
That leads to such deeper conversations.
Yeah. Being present to respond to what's actually happening, not your own comment or your own feeling about it, but just going into what's happening rather than need to defend it or make it safe for you to feel okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing you touched on too is that feeling that it's not right or it's right in the moment. Gut feeling, whatever we want to call it, intuition. That's definitely an art. That's something that
takes practice.
It's very you need it. And we were talking about this in my last mastery session, and one thing that it brought back to my mind is that I used to. I'm not a very detailed person, so and I'm not a very handy person. And things like curtains, going to buy curtains. I remember going along to wherever it was, and then we were asked, so what's the measurements? It's like, well, it looks like this. I had no idea. And then we just decided to choose one, and it fitted perfectly.
Right.
And it's like, hey, that intuition thing does work. But trying to trust
I wouldn't recommend doing that every time. But
yeah. Not in the handyman.
You might have to make a few return trips to the shop. But
yeah, well, that's right. And I didn't.
Sometimes it works out.
Yeah. But if you practice that and trust it a little bit more, that comes into it as well, for sure.
Completely. I mean, I learned about this years ago, and so this is about out there, but I have a way of feeling within myself an energy that's a yes or a no. So most of my decisions in my life, I do the rational analysis. I look at what my options are, and then I make the decision based on how I feel within myself as a yes or a no. And I learned that years ago. And the funniest thing is when I follow that energy or that feeling into most of the things in my life, I never know why I'm doing them mostly. I just followed the energy. And it's been really funny because the reason I think rationally I'm doing a thing often doesn't turn out to be what what the reason is that ultimately is why I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Without going into the details.
Yeah.
So I think there is I don't know, there's a deeper part to authenticity too, which is that you're trusting the deeper part of yourself to show you the way, to show you the direction that your life's meant to take.
Yeah. And as you said, it's an ongoing process.
Yes.
It's a forever learning, because there's circumstances that are going to change along the way, challenges that come up in your life, all those sorts of things that test that authenticity.
Yeah.
So thank you, everyone. As always, any comments, feedback, please feel free to connect with us in whatever form works.
Yep.
And we'll see you next time.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.